All right, so to continue on with the Iranian hostage issue, when the Americans are taken, now we have a major issue because normally the American policy is not to negotiate with terrorists at all. And in this case, the American hostages, though not physically harmed, are going to be mentally harmed, and they're going to be held in Iran for over 400 days. Okay, the Iranian hostage crisis begins late in 1979 and will not end until early in 1981. But in this process, there's a lot of negotiation going on between whether or not the Shah should return to Iran. If they do, they're going to kill him. There's no doubt about that. But now we have the problem of, like, what do we do to get our hostages back? And we have a failed attempt to recover them. That's not going to work. And in this whole process, the Americans and Jimmy Carter are looking very, very weak. And this is good for the Soviets. They're going to have their own issue, of course, but it makes us look weak because now we're negotiating with terrorists. And, of course, that's going to lead to Jimmy Carter not getting reelected in 1980 and lead to Ronald Reagan. And, of course, that deal is being brokered by Carter and eventually by Reagan to get the Iranian hostages back. As a matter of fact, in 1981, on Inauguration Day, the hostages are released and sent to Germany for reevaluation and then brought back to the States later in March. So it's amazing that, here we are, we're the most powerful country in the world, one of the two most powerful countries in the world, and we hit a big bump in the road when it comes to terrorism and hostage issues, and it really backs us down quite a bit. We've got to really look at ourselves in this whole Cold War issue, because now it's not just the Soviets. We got to deal with the Middle East. We've had the problems with OPEC and now the Iranian hostage crisis, okay? And Iran, though, will elect a president, they'll still stay a republic. They're considered a republic. They're really a theocratic government because the Ayatollah becomes the supreme leader, and that's kind of how it's been since 1979. All right, now, on a side note, I was actually there when the hostages came back to the United States. They came into the little Air Force base that is near where I grew up, and of course I was only 12 months, 13 months old, but I can say I was there. All right, here's some pictures. You can see these are the American hostages here on the left, and that is the Ayatollah Khomeini on the right. Now, like I said, the Soviets have their own issues as well. Also in 1979, Margaret Thatcher becomes the first female prime minister of England. And here you are with a major female role, female player in this Cold War issue. And she and Ronald Reagan are going to work very, very closely in ending the Cold War. And it'll be a lot of what she does in Western Europe that will help us win the Cold War and the Cold War in general. All right. Now, like I said, the Soviets have their own issues as well. And they're fighting Afghan rebels in Afghanistan, okay? Afghanistan is one of the few countries in the world that has actually never been taken over. The only group that really has taken over is the exception, the Mongols. So in this case, here we are, the Soviets, this is their hot war to try to spread communism into the Middle East. Iran will hold them off, will not let them in, so they try to go into Afghanistan. When I say the U.S. supports these freedom fighters, it's actually not the entire U.S. government. It's just really the CIA supporting these mujahideen, is what they're called, the mujahideen, in fighting off the Soviets. And this is going to happen over the course of 10 years. It's going to begin in 1979 and end in 1989. And really this feudal war, this is the Soviets' Vietnam. This feudal war is not going to help the Soviets at all in their cause to continue to spread communism. It really will bring an end to the Cold War because the Soviet Union cannot defeat them. And of course, the American support, which is being done in secret, is major. The Mujahideen are given ground-to-air missiles to shoot down Russian Soviet helicopters, which have been detrimental in the early parts of the war. And a lot of Soviet soldiers are going to die in this case. Now, the problem is when the war is over, we don't give the Afghani freedom fighters any more support. They're looking for U.S. aid, which had been given everywhere else around the world, but now they weren't getting it. And really it's because the U.S. did not want to give aid to a country they weren't supporting. And of course that Mujahideen leadership turns into the Taliban, and the Taliban is going to support Al-Qaeda, and of course terrorism of the modern world is going to kick into play. But this is a Soviet hot war, and this will really help bring an end to the Cold War. All right, so in the next video, we're going to focus on the 1980s and move on into the end of the Cold War, getting into the more modern world.